intimacy gets a bad rap as we age. There are so many unanswered questions when it comes to older women and sex. So how do we change this? Today, we've got an expert in women's sexual health. She's an OBGYN and sexual medicine specialist here to talk about some very common but rarely discussed issues. Now, a warning to our viewers, this is adult content. Please welcome Dr. Lyndsey Harper.
Hey, thanks for having me. So glad to talk about these really important issues with y'all today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Harper, because we need your expertise so Al doesn't pontificate.
Oh, my goodness.
We know that as we age, intimacy becomes more intimidating. And as women, how can we reduce our anxiety?
Yeah, honestly, whenever there's a big issue, whether it's money or whether it's a lingering health problem that we're scared to think about or sex, whenever we don't talk about it, it gets bigger and gets bigger and gets bigger. And especially within a relationship, this lack of communication can really drive a wedge between partners. And that builds our anxiety. What are we going to do about it? Is it hopeless? Does this mean something about my partner, about me? Are we doomed? All of these thoughts can start swirling. And when we're not used to having open and honest conversations about sex, this can really become a huge problem. So the first place to start is to really get yourself educated. How do we even have these conversations? And I think these can be modeled for us in books, potentially on programs like this, and conversations with your healthcare providers, so that you can really become educated and armed to start having conversations. We don't have to talk about how many times we're having sex per week to everybody, but we do really need to start having conversations about painful sex, about trouble with desire, really things that are keeping us from living our best lives so that we can really, get back to the life that we deserve.
All right. So as an OBGYN, how do you advise women to get support outside of the doctor's office?
Yeah, we have such limited time with our doctors, and we need so much more help. I think this is, exemplified in many different areas of health, unfortunately. And this is the reason why I started Rosie, which is an app for women to access evidence-based resources for sexual health problems, whether it be menopause, sexual pain, cancer and sexuality, which is a huge issue, all types of different issues. We need a place that's safe, right? And that we know was made by doctors and therapists to find this type of information. So Rosie's a platform where women can access that information. There's also some really great books. One of them is called A Tired Woman's Guide to Passionate Sex, written by one of my favorite sex therapists named Dr. Lori Mintz. There's also one called Menopause Manifesto by Dr. Jen Gunter, and then a great website called omgyes.com, where women can really access the resources they need to get help outside of their doctor's office.
I'm so happy you're talking about this. So important. And as an OBGYN, I'm sure you get some really personal questions. What kind of things do your patients ask you that they'd never dream of Googling?
Yeah, unfortunately, we were talking a little bit about this earlier. We're not really sure what we're going to get when we Google. I think most of us are afraid of running into some explicit pop-ups that might linger, in our search history for too long. And the other problem is that we don't have a way to vet which information is good versus which information is bad. So I think what happens is that women don't Google these things, or if they do, they might get bad information. And then these questions go unanswered. And sometimes the women that I talk to, they have been having the same problem for decades, right? And that just creates an even bigger problem than they ever started with. So some really common questions that women are looking for the answers to are, what has happened to my sexual desire? Or why does my partner want so much more sex than me? Or why is sex painful? Or why can't I have an orgasm? These are actually really common questions that women need and deserve answers to that unfortunately we're not really able to get. So there's such a stigma against these things, really, to provide women with the answers that they need, that if we're talking about different sexual health products or interventions, that these are, for bad girls, or only a certain type of person would want to have access to those resources. And that's just completely false. In fact, all women need access to this knowledge, at least, but to these products as well, because they can help us live better and more fulfilling lives as women, but also as partners too. And so when we're talking specifically about sexual pain, there are lots of different resources for that, including some over-the-counter moisturizers. There's one that I love called Cocoa Bliss, made by Womaness. And you can see it's in this beautiful packaging. It doesn't look like it belongs locked up in a drawer anywhere. And we can start to incorporate these things in our everyday lives as part of our healthcare routine that we all deserve.
All right, Doc, we just have 30 seconds left, and I want to get your thoughts on this. They say that a woman's sex drive decreases as she goes through menopause. Is this a myth? And if not, what can be done to increase it?
Yeah, it's hard to make generalizations, but a lot of women do describe that their desire kind of goes down the tank as we age. And what a lot of women are describing actually is that they've changed from spontaneous desire to responsive desire, which means they need a cue to kind of kick off those sexual thoughts. So one really effective tool that has been shown in several studies is erotica, or kind of, a spicy novel or written literature that people can read to kind of get the thoughts flowing. And so I like to teach my patients really about erotica as a prescription to really access the drive that they're looking for to keep their sexual lives healthy and fulfilling.
Ooh. A little erotica.
A little Christian Grey, if you will.
There we go. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harper. We appreciate you. DBL Nation, Dr. Harper's app, Rosie, encourages women to change the way they think about themselves sexually, because that shouldn't change when we hit menopause. Check out meetrosie.com or download it in the App Store. Cocoa Bliss can be found on womaness.com. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doc.
Thanks.